Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Buying a Home in Rotterdam webinar. We always start a few minutes later just to give everyone a chance to join. A few household remarks. This session will be recorded and shared with you guys, so no need to take notes or remember everything because you will receive it afterwards via email. Today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about a little bit about us, EHN. We're going to talk about renting versus buying, the buying process, and then there will be plenty of time for FAQs. My name is Kimo Paula. I'm the founder of Expat Housing Network, and I'm half Dutch, half Caribbean. I have a daughter who is 4 years old, but she thinks she's 16, so that's a lovely four-nager there. And I bought my own home 5 years ago. That was before I got into this business. And if I would have known then what I would know now, then the process would have looked completely different because it took me about 7 offers before I got my final offer accepted. To give you a little bit of an idea, back then the market was already very competitive. So it wasn't easy, but I think that if I would have known then what I know now, I would have been a little bit more successful. Luckily, we've learned a lot and we're here to share that with you. But greatness is achieved in the agency of others. So I am not here alone. With me is Katie. Katie, I'm not sure if they can see you and hear you. Maybe you can say a quick hi, share a little bit more with yourself.
Hi everyone, nice to see you. Well, I don't really see you, but nice to see you, Kimo. I'm Katie. I originally come from Cyprus. I've lived in the Netherlands for almost 2 years now, and I think as many of you here, I have lived in 3 different countries so far, and I can say that the Netherlands and Rotterdam especially has been the first place that I can feel like home. And I'm happy to see people coming on because I'm sure that we share similar experiences and feelings. So I'm more than happy to assist you with the questions you have and hopefully with buying a home.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Katie owns a home as well and has helped plenty of people out by now with actually supporting to buy a home. So that's great. As you can see, the rest of the team is also from abroad. We have a few Dutchies or Belgians here in the team, but the majority has actually gone through the same process as you have. So a little bit more about us. We're not traditional real estate agents. What does that mean? We don't really have a background in real estate. The majority of us have backgrounds in liberal arts, psychology, music, name it, and we love homes, but we love helping people out even more. And that's why we got into this business. The focus of us is only helping people find a home, whether it's buying or renting. Well, in this case, you'll be here because you're interested in buying a home. We'll be able to help you out. And that's the main focus. And why is it important? Because if you compare us, for example, to a traditional realtor who sells properties and buys properties for people, then currently it's a seller's market. So it's much easier for him to kind of like drift towards the seller client because, hey, that's an easy win. It's easy money. We are not like that. We help you buy a home. That's our focus. We've become pretty good at it, even though it's relatively competitive at the moment. I think that we've become quite efficient and this is our focus. So we will not stray and start helping somebody out who wants to sell a property. We also charge a fixed fee, so no commission based. Why would you pay more if you're already paying more for the house? I don't understand that. That's dinosaur business. And we know what it's like to sell into a new country. Katie mentioned that, and the majority of the team has actually gone through that same experience. So more information, full disclosure always, I am not a financial advisor. So I share opinions and experiences. So if you have very, very specific questions about finance, then you feel free to ask them here, but always double check with a true financial specialist. By the way, maybe a few household questions or mentions. When you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A. The Q&A is where we will answer them at the end of this presentation. So pop me the Q&A, you can find it on the bottom or the top of your screen. So that's that. Before we start with the presentation, we would love to get to know you a little bit better. So we have a little poll that I'm going to share. It's a couple of questions. Where did you find out about us? How old are you? What does your household look like? And what made you decide to buy? Please feel free to fill in these answers or these questions. No, not mandatory. So I'll just wait a few seconds for everyone to fill it in. Why do we ask these questions? Because they can help us actually custom make this webinar a little bit more to your needs. Perfect. I'm seeing the first few answers come in. Okay, so the majority of you found us actually through social media. That's great. Um, the majority of you are between 26 and 34. And oh, we've got quite a good mix here, singles, couples, and families. What is the reason that you guys decide to buy? The rents are too high. I can completely understand that. You would love to settle. That's a big compliment for us Dutchies. And you would like to build up equity, which is a nice little bonus to actually buying a home. Thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts. Let's move on. So today's goal is to add value to you guys. We believe in sharing information freely, so we're going to share as much as possible. But we also know that people are in different phases of the process, so we've tried to keep it a little bit general and global. If you have any specific questions, again, pop them in the Q&A, and Katie, who will be managing the Q&A at the end, will actually help ask and I'll answer the questions. By the way, if there's a lot of questions, then Katie will be answering some of these already in the background. Newsflash. Um, this was a newsflash at the beginning of the year. It's still relevant, so I'm going to share it with you. It's maybe not super current news, but there's two things I'm going to share with you. One is the national mortgage guarantee. If you're planning of buying a home up to a certain amount, then you can actually benefit from this. And these amounts, like last year was 310,000 euros, this year is 325. These amounts are the purchase price of the property. It doesn't matter how much you borrow, how much cash you put up yourself. This is the purchase price. So if you buy a property for 350,000 euros and you put 25,000 euros up in cash, it doesn't count. So this is only if you buy a property up to this money. So what does it do, the National Mortgage Guarantee? It gives you the option, or not the option. Let me give you a little bit of context. 2008, the global financial crisis hit, and then a lot of properties were underwater, typically Dutch saying. But what does that mean is that the mortgage that was out was higher than what they would earn if they would sell the house. And some of these people were actually forced to sell their house because they didn't have a job anymore. They couldn't pay for their mortgage. And then they ended up with a big debt. That's when the government said, okay, hey, we need to come up with something. We call it the National Mortgage Guarantee. What does it do? Let's say you're forced to sell the property at some point because maybe you lose a job, maybe something happens, and God forbid it happens, but let's say you're forced to move or to sell your property, and then your mortgage is still higher than the amount that you would recoup if you were to sell your property. Then that difference is covered by the National Mortgage Guarantee. There's two kind of like pros to this. Of course, this one, the fact that that part is covered. But the other interesting part about getting a national mortgage guarantee is that banks will give you a better interest rate. Why? Because the risk is mitigated somewhat by this mortgage guarantee. So that's a good thing to know. 325,000 euros, that's the purchase price, the upmost purchase price. 325,000 euros and €1, that's not eligible anymore for the national mortgage guarantee. Then transfer tax exemption. That is interesting for people who are younger than 35, who are first-time exemption users. So it doesn't matter how many homes you have in the Netherlands or abroad. If you're using this exemption for the first time, then you can benefit from this. Then what else is important to know? So if you're younger than 34 or 35, and if you're using this exemption for the first time, you can only buy a property up to 400,000 euros. If you buy a property that's more expensive, you cannot benefit from the tax exemption. And then the last one is, if one of you is 35, then what happens? So technically, when two people buy a home, they'll both get an equal share in the home, 50-50. The person that is 35 years or older will pay 2% transfer tax. The other person that's 34 or younger will actually pay 0%. So that ends up being 1% of the total purchase price. This is quite an amount if you calculate it properly. So please be mindful of this and take it into account. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about renting versus buying. This is a property in Rotterdam. The property is on the market for 1,295 euros. There's a few pros and cons to renting a home. Well, first, the pro is you have flexibility because you can technically leave when you can terminate the contract with 1 month's notice. It's a little bit more difficult when you own a home. And you don't have any property or homeowner's taxes, so that's a benefit. There's also no down payments. The only thing that you have to pay is the deposit, of course, but you'll get that back once you leave the property. And the maintenance of the property, is, at least the major maintenance, is the landlord's responsibility. What are the cons, though? Well, the 1,295 euros is money down the drain because it goes to someone else. You don't build up any equity. So that's the second part. And the third one is you can't benefit from market conditions. I read a piece in the news, I think 2 days ago, that said that the market has increased again by about 13% since last year, May, and we're expecting to see the market increase more in the near future. So if you don't own a home, you can't benefit from that. Please note that if the market dips, you're also not risking assuming a lower value of the property. But when you buy a home, there's also some pros and cons, right? So the pros are you have stability because the landlord cannot kick you out. The second part is that you get some interest deduction. What does that mean? The interest that you pay on your mortgage is something that you can deduct from your taxable income at the end of the year. Then you build up equity because you actually pay off part of your mortgage on a monthly basis. The cons to owning a home, of course, property and homeowners taxes. It's harder to move because you would need to sell the property and maintenance is your responsibility. Okay, but let's compare these two, right? Okay, so for a rental property, you're paying 1295, which is about 15,500 euros per year. Buying for this property, you would pay 345,000 euros. The interest rate is 1.5% about, and then your monthly payments would be 995 euros. But of that amount, you would be paying about 400 bucks and interest. So technically, what you'd be saving on a monthly basis is 500 something euros. And don't forget, because you have the tax interest debate, interest rebate scheme in the Netherlands, so you'll probably get about 200 bucks of that monthly interest back as well at the end of the year. The closing fees, however, is something that's a little bit more substantial. We'll talk about that in a few. So that is like the entrance cost to buying a home. But if you look at when you'll actually start earning a little bit of money, and of course, don't forget the closing fees, because that's something you would have to pay at some point, you actually start earning more money on month 7 versus a rental home. Okay, what will you need in savings? This is important. Before you actually enter the market, make sure you have some money in your bank account because you would need some money in savings to purchase a property. What is it? Well, first of all, it's a transfer tax. We talked about it a little bit before. If you're 34 years or younger, if you're buying for the first time using the exemption, and if you're buying a property up to 400,000 euros, then you're not paying the transfer tax. If you are none of these criteria, then you will be paying transfer tax. Transfer tax is the majority of the purchase cost, which is about 2%. By the way, you see like a third column here. This is tax deductible, these costs. So when it says yes, like for example, the mortgage deed drafted by the notary, you can deduct them from your taxable income, these amounts at the end of the year. Why is that? The government said mortgages are a difficult product. We want to make sure that people get the support they need to actually use or to actually define and find the right product for them. So anything mortgage related will be tax deductible. The notary, however, will also draft the transfer deed. It's not tax deductible. You'll have a bank or mortgage broker. Please don't be mistaken. You also pay for getting a mortgage if you already go with a bank, but these costs luckily are tax deductible. Then you have your typical real estate agent. They charge 1 to 2% of the purchase price. I don't understand that. Why would you pay more if you're already paying more for your property? There's no right incentive there. We charge a fixed fee. Unfortunately, we are not tax deductible yet. We're doing our best. Then the appraiser is necessary because the bank will only give you money if you have an appraisal report, and that is tax deductible. Then you have the technical inspector, the interpreter, which is mandatory at the end of end of the process. They're not tax deductible. A bank guarantee, we'll talk about it a little bit later, not tax deductible, but the mortgage guarantee amount that you would have to pay up front is 0.7%, and that is tax deductible. Okay, let's move on. Where are you in the buying process? I'm curious to know where you guys are in the buying process. So we have a few more questions. I'll launch the poll quickly. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to answer. Not mandatory, but please feel free to share your thoughts. Where in the buying process are you? I'm seeing some answers come in. The majority of you are actually researching, so that's great. Did you chat with an agent yet? No. Okay, that's also great because hopefully a lot of the things that we'll share with you tonight will be new. Did you chat with a mortgage broker yet? Yes, some of you said yes. The majority of you say no. I'm very curious to find out what you would actually like to learn more in terms of mortgages. There's a few of you actually viewing properties already. That's great as well. I hope that you have found something and you're keen to submit an offer on it. Perfect. Thanks a lot for sharing that. That is really helpful. Let's move on. We'll talk a little bit about the buying timeline. This is the buying timeline. It's a bit of a long timeline. On average, it takes 3 to 6 months to actually find and secure something. But we're going to start with the beginning. So you start your search. By the way, this is a little bit skewed, this period, because it can take a little bit longer depending on how fast you find something or how fast you get your offer accepted. But let's say you get your offer accepted. That is great news. Then you do your due diligence. We'll talk a little bit about that in a few. And then you sign the purchase contract. There's about a week and a half in between between most of the time. The bridge contract will actually commit you to moving forward, but it's not an official commitment yet. Once you've signed, you still have 3 days between the bridge contract and the cool off period to reconsider. So let's say you wake up sweating in the middle of the night and you think, oh my God, what have I done? I don't want to buy a property. I want to move to another country next month. Then you can pull out. The mortgage guys, either a bank or a mortgage broker, will actually start with the official application once the document is signed and the appraisal report is in. Please don't wait for this very last moment to actually chat with them. Make sure you touch base with them already so you know what you can actually borrow, you know what kind of products there are, and you know what you have to prepare to make sure that that application runs smoothly. So let's say you've signed a bridge contract. Congratulations, the cool off period is ended. Wow, now you're actually committed. That means that the mortgage guys will actually chase the bank to get your mortgage. On average, it takes 4 weeks, especially now in summer, because a lot of banks also have people that go on holidays. It'll take 4 weeks. Sometimes it happens much faster, but I would at least take into account 4 weeks. Then your mortgage application is approved. Hooray, hooray. You've got money from the bank. And then about 10 days before you get the keys to the property, or 7 days, you get a final statement of completion. We talked a little bit about those purchase costs. So what happens is you have the purchase price and the bank will give you that much money. They're not going to give you any more money unless you want to do refurbishment or renovations. But let's say you get that much money, 400,000 euros. Great. Then on top of that, you would still need to pay the purchase costs, right? Most of that will be paid at the end of the process. So the notary will give you a bill stating this is what you have to pay for the property, this is what you have to pay for purchase cost, and then we'll deduct the mortgage that you received from that amount. And then the remaining amount you would have to pay into the account of the notary, the escrow account, before you get the keys. Then once you have the final date arriving, you will go to the property first, and then you make sure that the property is in a condition that you last saw it in. If something is damaged properly, then you can still flag that. After you've gone to the property, you actually go to the notary. What they'll do is they'll make sure that the deeds are ready. The deed that makes you owner of the property will be there, but also the deed that makes you a proud owner of a mortgage will be there. Okay, after you've signed, you'll get the keys and you'll be the proud owner of a property. Then let's say you move in 2 days afterwards, something breaks in the property or something is not working that you find out. You want to finally bake that cake, but then the oven kind of like freaks out. This is something that you can flag to the seller because the seller has the obligation to inform you about anything that is not working on the day of transfer. Don't wait too long with that because you have to prove that it was the case when you actually got the keys. If you wait 2 months and the oven breaks, sometimes that's just bad luck. But don't wait too long. So give it a couple of weeks max before you flag or when you flag these things. Then who will you meet? So you have the timeline now. You know what you have to pay. Who will you meet during the process? Robin, he's your mortgage advisor. He will share more information about the mortgage and the best conditions and rates. I always like to compare a mortgage advisor and a bank in the following way. The bank is kind of like this old fashioned retail shop. When you go there, they'll try to sell you the products they have there. In the bank's case, that's 3 or 4 products. The mortgage advisor is kind of like your personal stylist slash shopper. They don't care where you buy as long as you're happy with the product, you know what you're buying, and it is a good product for you, right? So that's the difference. They'll have a range of about 30 or 40 products they can actually offer you because they can work with different providers, different mortgage providers. Please know that they're not being paid by the provider, so they'll be independent and working on your behalf. They also, of course, submit the application. They'll make sure everything is prepared for that, and they'll chase the bank to make sure you get your mortgage. Then you have the notary, Hans. Hans creates the legally binding agreements between you and the seller. If you're buying in Rotterdam, then make sure you double check the purchase contract. The purchase contract is the only agreement that is not drafted by the notary. This is something the selling agent does. The mortgage deed and the deed of transfer are drafted by the notary, so you can make sure that that is a good document. Of course, read it carefully as well and make sure you have someone to double check it if necessary, but the notary will come into play once the purchase contract is signed. Then you have Michelle, the appraiser. Why is she important? Because the bank will only give you an amount up to the value of the property. But who defines the value? That will be Michelle. She'll come in after your offer gets accepted. Don't ask her to come in before, because if you ask her to come in before and you pay for her and you don't get your offer accepted, then it's lost money. So ask her to come in after your offer is accepted. What she'll do, she'll come to the property, take a few photos, chat with the selling agent, and then she'll do the majority of the work behind her desk, behind her computer. She'll look at properties sold in the neighborhood that are similar in the last 6 to 12 months. And based on that, and of course, the condition of the property and secondary criteria, she'll define the value. What she does then is she doesn't send it to the bank directly. What she does is she sends it to an independent institute. They check if Michelle played by the rules. If she did, then she gets a green stamp and then it goes to the bank. The bank will then accept that value. It might take about 3 to 7 days to get your valuation, so don't wait too long before you book Michelle. Then we have Millie. Millie is the building inspector. She's not legally required. The appraiser is legally required by the bank. But Millie is not. What has Millie done? She has a background as a contractor. She knows what to look for when it comes to buildings. So ask her to come with you because she'll double check if that crack in the wall is a big problem or not, right? So you want to make sure that you know what you're buying and that you don't end up buying a place that you have to, for example, renovate the roof after what, 2 months once you've moved in. It takes about 2 days to create the report. And also ask Millie to come in after the offer gets accepted. Okay, then we have Katie, your buying consultant. Katie is one of the best, so I have full confidence in her. Most likely, when you actually sign up for an intake, Katie will be supporting you, and Katie will be informing you and assisting you during the full process. There's a couple of things that Katie does really, really well, and one of those things is define the value of the property. Why is that important? Because it's going to give you information on what you would need to submit as an offer. You don't want to stray away too much from that value, so you want to make sure that you understand what you're buying. She'll also double check documents, she'll book in third parties, and she'll guide you throughout the process. I think it's very important to have somebody with you. Of course, I'm not trying to sell here, but I think that if I would have gotten a agent on my side when I looked for a property, and that was a while ago, I think it would have gone much faster, and I might have paid a little bit less than what I ended up paying. Of course, I'm not unhappy. The market's gone up since, but still, I think it is important to understand what you can have from an agent. Then frequently asked questions. Well, that was quick actually, right? This was kind of like the presentation, but most of the times we get a lot of questions asked us that we want to answer to you already. This is also the moment where you can just pop in your questions into the Q&A and Katie will actually manage them. Katie, maybe you can also manage this part of the presentation.
Yeah, can you hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, of course. So the first question would be, what happens if you want to leave the country after several years?
That's a good question. There's three things that you can do. You can keep your home, but you'll still have your mortgage cost. What you can also do is rent out your home, but you need permission from your bank. Most of the time, if you leave the country for a year or two because you're on assignment, then you can do that. If you leave the country and you don't know when you'll be coming back, then the bank will say, sorry, but you have to change your mortgage from a residential mortgage to a buy to let mortgage. A buy to let mortgage means that you actually become sort of like an investor and you can rent out the property. You can't really live in it yourself. Once you do that, you have to change it again to a residential mortgage. Those are the two options that you can do. The third one, of course, is you can sell your home. And luckily in the Netherlands, you don't pay a penalty when you pay off your mortgage in one go when you sell the property. And the other good thing is, let's say you've made a little bit of profit, then you don't pay capital gains tax either. So these are the three things that you can actually do when you want to leave the country.
Perfect. That was well informed. Thank you. And what about how much can I borrow from the bank?
Hmm. Also, a good question. Oh, sorry, I skipped that too quick. You can borrow up to 100% of the value of the property. So we talked a little bit about Michelle, who would come by the property and define the value. That's what you can borrow from the bank. Let's say you want to do some renovations, then the bank will also consider paying a little bit for that if you can prove that it will add value to the property. They'll pay about 60 to 70% of the amount that it's cost to renovate. Is there anything else? Sometimes, if you want to make the property more energy sufficient, so you want to get solar panels, the bank will be keen to support with that as well, but they'll never cover the full amounts there. So you would still need to put up some cash towards renovations and stuff like that yourself.
Okay, perfect. And can I rent my house or a room of my house?
You can. There's two separate ways. One, rent out your house. You need permission from the bank. If the bank will give you permission, then most likely they will request to have you put several clauses in the contract. One of the clauses is that the tenant will leave after a certain period of time, or if you're able to change your mortgage to a buy-to-let mortgage, then you can rent it out for as long as you want. If you want to rent out a room, that is also possible. The bank will be a little bit less interested in that part, but you have to make sure that you add a clause in the contract that states that when you vacate the property, the tenant will also leave. So that's very important. I would flag both with the bank if I were you, because if the bank finds out that you're renting out your house or a room without them knowing, then they might fine you, or they might say, you know what, you'll have to pay the mortgage back because this is breaking the mortgage agreement that we have with you.
So guys, as Kimo said before, make sure you understand what you're reading in your contracts and what you're signing up for, and be clear about what you want to do with the homes.
Yep.
Next question would be, what is the typical amount that I should overbid?
Do I have a visual here? No, I don't have a visual. This is one of the questions we get very, very often. Why is it important, and why is this not the question you should ask? Because let me give you an example. The property that is on the market is, and we're going to make it very easy, it's 100,000 euros. You won't find many of those properties, but let's say it's 100,000 euros. That is the asking price. Then the market value could very well be 125,000 euros. And let's say somebody buys it for 140,000 euros, then the selling agent can say, hey, look, I had 40% over what was it 40%? Yeah, that's quite a lot actually.
That's a big jump.
That's a big jump. 40, but it's for example purposes, 40% over what the asking price was. But the asking price is the value that the seller puts there to attract people, to maybe impress the sellers a little bit. Let's say same property, somebody puts it up for 70,000 euros, then he can say, hey, it's sold for 140,000 euros. I actually got 100% increase on the asking price. If we use the second agent's narrative, if everybody starts saying, hey, this is what you should overbid over the asking price, then at some point we'll all go crazy, because the asking price is very arbitrary. This is what the selling agent defines. And some selling agents are very opportunistic, some selling agents are very cautious. So let's say the same property is actually put up for 140,000 euros, or 125,000 euros, which is the exact value of the property. If somebody said, hey, I heard that you have to offer 40% more, imagine what you would actually offer on that property. Or if somebody said, hey, I actually heard you have to offer 100% more, imagine what people would offer for that property. This is a very extreme example, of course. I think it's much easier if you use a property that's 300,000 euros and somebody offers 360,000 euros. That's a 20% increase. But the same rules and the same logic apply. So don't look at the asking price too much. Look at the market value of the property. Why is that important? Like I mentioned, the market value is what you'll get from the bank, and the asking price is what the selling agent defines like that, right? To actually attract more people and impress the sellers.
So do your research, guys, and don't go 40%.
Yes.
What are your fees?
It's a good question. So we have two packages. One is the smart package, which is kind of like the virtual agent, will guide you throughout the process. We don't offer a search or anything like that, but once you've actually found the property that you're interested in, then we'll submit the offer for you. We'll do all the research, the market value will define that, and we'll look at all the documents that are linked to it. You'll get a personal buying manager. In this case, you'll have Katie, and she'll guide you throughout that process. Once your offer is accepted, we'll review the contracts, we'll book third parties, and we'll make sure you're ready to get the keys to the property. That's the one, and we charge 2,000 euros for it. No hidden fees, no extra taxes. What you see is what you get, and what you pay is what you get. Then we have the complete. Complete is kind of like where we hold your hand a little bit. We still don't offer the search because it's very easy to find properties on Funda, but we will actually go to viewings with you. We'll schedule viewings with you. We'll actually go there when the third parties are booked. We'll attend the notary, and we'll make sure that we'll be there and hold your hand throughout the process. That's what we do. We charge a little bit more for that because time is of the essence, and also a little bit scarce. So we'll charge a little bit more for complete than we do for smart. Then the following question.
And what is the 10% deposit that I need to complete?
The 10% deposit. Also no visual next time. I need to upgrade this presentation a little bit. What is the 10%? Let me give you an example. And I'm going to scroll all the way back here. Why is that relevant? Because after this period, so once the bridge contract is signed, the seller will have no guarantee that you actually move forward. Let's say you move out the country, they never hear back from you, then the seller will maybe only find out closer to the transfer deed. So the seller will want to have some security. So they'll ask you to deposit 10% of the bridge price up front. You can also get a bank guarantee, which will cost you either nothing or 250 or 300 bucks. And then the bank will actually guarantee that amount. Let's say something happens. Technically, if the seller were to pull out without giving any reason and break the agreement, then it's much easier for you to chase the seller and say, hey, you owe me, and I'm going to chase you. I'm going to fine you for up to 10% of the property and the purchase price. The seller, however, will need some guarantee from you to actually be able to do that. So that's the 10% deposit that you would need to pay.
Thank you. That makes it clear. And what kind of impact does COVID-19 have on the housing market?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that all of you have read the news. The prices are going up. That is because people have saved money. People think homes are more important than ever, and I technically agree with them. And also, what we've seen is that a dispersion has taken place a little bit in the beginning, especially when COVID just hit. We saw a little bit of kind of like a hold on the market, but after 2 or 3 months, people started suddenly saying, "Hey, this lockdown is impacting me, so I want to buy a home that has a little bit more space, that has that garden, that has that second bedroom." So what we saw is that people were leaving the city a little bit, and now that vaccination programs are ramping up, we're seeing people flock towards the city again. We're seeing borders open up, so we're seeing a lot of internationals travel and move to the Netherlands. What will it have in the foreseeable future? I think that with the current monetary policies, the interest rates will remain relatively low. I also believe that homes will still remain important. I think it's a feeling that we can't shake for the foreseeable years, and I think I think it's pretty good. I think that communities have become stronger, and people are looking a little bit more inwards than they're looking outwards. But I think that the next 6 to 12 months, if not 24 months, we'll see the price increase. Maybe at some point it will stabilize a little bit, but I don't see anything happening anytime soon. At some point, of course, somebody has to pay the bill because like COVID was not free, but it might very well be that it's the next generation that will do that instead of us, sad as that may be. So when you buy a property, don't buy it for 1 year or 2 years. Buy it for 3 to 5 years or more because you want to make sure that you build up a little bit of equity. And also, if, for example, in 2 years there's a little bit of market stabilization or a little bit of a dip, then you can weather that by staying in the property a little bit longer. COVID is not gone yet. We'll see what happens in the autumn and in winter. But looking at the different variants and what the vaccinations are doing so far, I am very hopeful. And I think that more and more people will actually come out of their shell and start living their lives. And one of that aspect is actually buying a home, looking at your home, renovating homes, all of that stuff.
Mm. Thank you for the market insights. That means a lot to have that information.
Mhm.
And next question is, does working with Expat Housing Network add any value?
Of course, I would say it does, but let me like you're going to be the judge of that. I'm just going to share a few things with you. Like I think that selling agents take our offers more seriously than if you would submit an offer yourself. Why is that? Because that due diligence part is super important. Um, we can also book viewings in when sometimes it's no longer possible. Especially currently, it's a very busy market, and we're actually able because we're considered to be a professional party to actually book in viewings because selling agents again will take us more seriously, but will also see us as a more realistic candidate. We also, of course, support with reviewing all the Dutch documents, legal documents, property documents, purchase contract, and so on. And of course, like I mentioned before, we help define the market value through market data. This is important because you don't want to end up buying a home for too much money and then finding out that you're not going to be able to get the mortgage that you want. Then we'll, of course, inform you about rules and regulations, and we'll make sure you don't make the same mistakes that I made when I started buying my home.
Perfect.
Then I would love to learn a little bit more about your experience. What are your thoughts about the webinar so far? By the way, there's plenty of time for Q&As after this, so pop in the questions in the Q&A if you have any specific questions. We'll be here to answer them, most likely all of them, because I kind of raced through this presentation. I'll give you a few seconds to answer the questions in the poll. We're seeing some first answers come in. Thank you very much. Perfect. Okay, so the majority of us scoring us 8, 9s, and 10s. I think my parents would be very happy when they see those scores. Did you miss anything in this webinar? Some of you said yes, some of you said no. We're very curious to hear what you would like to know a little bit more of in terms of buying process. Some of you say, we'd love to know a little bit more about the mortgage process. Okay, feel free to ask. This is your time to ask anything about the buying process, whether it's how to buy a home, the winning offer, mortgages, name it. We'll try and answer them as best as we can. Thanks for sharing your answers. I think now we've come to the final slide. So, by the way, don't hesitate. Reach out to us, schedule a free intake with us. Go to expathousingnetwork.nl or ehn.works and click on the image below. Well, by the way, share this presentation with you guys. So don't hesitate to click on it and book an intake. Thanks a lot. Q&A session time. Are there any questions in the Q&A, Katie?
Yeah, of course. Guys, just to let you know, some of your questions have already been answered through the questions I made to Kimo. So if you still have some questions, please feel free to put them forward now. And apologies in advance if I mispronounce your name. I'm sorry, we have a lot of people from a lot of countries, and it's not possible for me to know everything, but I'm sure I will learn it when I see you on the intake. The first question would be from Amit. Can we take a loan from the bank even if we do not have an infinite job contract?
Yeah, that's a good question, Amit. So technically, the bank will accept you if you don't have an indefinite contract, but that means you have a temporary contract. You would, however, need to prove that the employer is actually inclined to keep you on when all goes well. What does this mean? You have to get an employer statement. It's kind of like a one piece of paper. It doesn't commit the employer to anything, but it's kind of like an intention paper, right? So they say if everything goes well, if the person will continue to perform, if the business allows, we'll continue to have you work for us. That will be enough for the bank for you in terms of a temporary contract. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Perfect, that was clear. The second question would be from Hey Yao. Does the bank give a loan on the asking price of the or the final price?
So the bank will give you a loan of the value of the property. So let's go back to that example. I'm going to make it a little bit different now, not the 100,000 euros. Let's say you find a property that's 300,000 euros. That's the asking price. The market value is 320,000 euros, but you're offering 340,000 euros. Then the bank will give you 320,000 euros because that is what Michelle will tell you the value is of that property after she's come in once your offer is accepted. What we will do is we'll also look at the value before you submit the offer. So we will tell you, we think the value is going to be anywhere between 318 and 324, and it ends up being 320. The bank will give you that amount. They're not going to give you a penny more unless you say, hey, we want to do renovations and we need some extra money for that. So that is good for you guys to know. So the bank will give you the market value, not the asking price and not necessarily purchase price. Sometimes with us, majority of the times, we'll be able to actually secure a property for at the market value or sometimes a little bit below. So then the bank will cover the full amount. But if you offer more, especially more attractive properties, then most likely you have to put up some cash yourself.
Okay, thank you for the answer, which leads us to the next question, and it's from an anonymous attendee. And how would the renovation mortgage work?
Okay, so the renovation mortgage works as follows. So let's say you want to redo the kitchen, you want to redo the bathroom, and you want to put a roof terrace up there. Then the appraiser, so Michelle in this case, she'll come and say, this is what the value of the property is now, and this is what the value of the property will be once all the renovations have been carried out. That's a certain amount. So let's say that is 30,000 euros. And in order to cover for the renovations, you would need 20,000 euros. Then the bank will say, okay, hey, we're going to cover part of this. We're going to cover maybe 60 or 70%. So what they'll give you is they'll give you about, what is it, like 15,000 euros, depending a little bit on what the amount is that you'll actually increase the value of. So do take into account that if you get a renovation mortgage out, that you have to put up cash yourself, again, 30 to 40% of what it will cost to actually renovate it.
Okay, perfect. Next question will be from another anonymous attendee, maybe the same, I'm not sure. Would be, if I'm self-employed or an entrepreneur myself, how is my mortgage calculated?
Yeah, that's a good one. So what they'll look at, and it differs a little bit per mortgage provider, but they'll look at your previous or historical earnings. So you have to prove that you have at least 1 year of earnings and preferably 2 years. That's what they'll base their mortgage amount on. So if you were to have like a regular salary, then you can use kind of like this rough calculation that you can multiply it by 5 times. Technically, the same thing amounts if you have proof of recurring revenue that you have as a business owner slash self-employed. So that's what you have to prove. Look at your annual statements and then use kind of like the average of that and then multiply that by about 5 times. That's what you'll get. Of course, you'll have to prove at some point that your business is consistent. So if your last invoice is from October 2020, then they might request you to come up with either a statement why that is the case or new invoices for this year.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question comes from Leila. Leila, thank you for this question. It's a really good one. I have an account in bank A. Can I get a mortgage from bank B?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So technically, you're not linked to the bank that you have an account with at the moment. So you can get a mortgage from any mortgage provider that you want. I hope that answers the question a little bit. So that was the question, right? I have an account with bank A. Can I get a mortgage from another bank?
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Sometimes if you have an account somewhere, the bank will give you a bit of a better rate, but the difference is very, very small. And I would definitely recommend you chat with a mortgage advisor or a financial specialist because they'll be able to tell you a little bit more about the best bank's mortgage rates for you.
Mm-hmm. And last but not the least is, how do I know this is the right area for me to buy if I haven't really lived in it?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I would do first is I would actually go to that area, get a feel for it, right? Like make sure if you feel comfortable in it and if you kind of like vibe with the area. If, for example, the amenities, facilities in the area is something you can work with. Of course, you'll never know what an area is like when you buy it, even if you've maybe lived in the city or in the country for years. Like I moved a lot in the Netherlands, and every time I moved to a new area, I didn't really know what to expect. But double check, of course, the area by actually going there, right? Maybe go there during the day, go there in the weekend, and also maybe ask people that are living there. Feel free to like ask, for example, the neighbors or something like that. And then, of course, look some things up online. There are a few platforms where you can find some kind of like demographic information about areas, but also look at properties in that area, right? It's going to give you a little bit more information about that. Is there anything else? There's a couple of other elements. Public transport, I think, is very important. So look at what you're going to do when you live in your home. Will you be working from home a lot? Will you be commuting a lot? What is your plan, right? Can you actually go to where you want to go from the location that you are in? Also look at your kind of like future plans. When I bought a home 5 years ago, my partner was pregnant, and little did we know a garden would have been lovely. Luckily, we're living on the ground floor, but if we would have known how lovely a garden would be with a little daughter who loves to run, then we might have decided to actually search for a little bit longer and go for a place with a garden. So also think a little bit about, okay, hey, where do I see myself 2, 3, 4 years from now? And is this home still suitable? Are there any other things? Yeah, so what I just mentioned is when you look at properties in that neighborhood, in that area, look at prices per square meter, right? And the property that you have in mind that you would love to buy, where is that on that scale? Is that very high or very low? Is that a typical property or non-typical property? So I think that is good to look into because that's going to give you a little bit more information about what you can expect in that area. That's it. I hope that helps.
Okay, yeah, that made it very clear, and I would definitely love to have that advice beforehand. Although I was very lucky with my own purchase, so grateful for that. Okay, guys, I don't see any more questions, which makes me feel confident because it seems that everything was clear. If not, please don't hesitate to. Oh, we have another question from Lisa. Have read some site which on lease, for example, up to 2057. Can you please explain that a little bit? So related
Yeah,
on ground lease. Very good question, Leila. You should keep coming to our webinars.
Good one. So sometimes the ground that the property is on is not owned by the homeowner. So sometimes it's owned by the actual municipality. Then you'll be paying lease to the municipality on an annual basis. This is something that Leila has seen on a listing, I think. And then what she sees is that there's several different options. One is that you'll continue to pay on a monthly basis or on an annual basis. There's also a situation where the current time frame, because most of the time the ground lease goes in time frames about 50 years, that the current time frame has been bought off. So that means that you don't have to pay for an extended period of time. And then after that time expires, you'll start paying on an annual basis again. So those are the two things. Double check if the ground is owned by the municipality or if it's privately owned. If the ground is privately owned, I would stay away from it because banks don't really really like it because the owner can decide whatever the ground lease is going to be in the future. So that's what I would advise. It doesn't necessarily have to have a major impact on the value of your property, but do inspect how much you will be paying on an annual basis, because it can have an impact on the mortgage that you can get from your bank, right? So double, triple check that. If you have any questions about a property that you see with ground lease, then that is something that we're happy to answer.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the explanation. I don't think we have more questions. If anyone has more questions, I'll be more than happy to talk to you guys and go through your questions personally, one-on-one. We're very happy with your questions and happy to see you on the webinar as well. And we hope that we have another question.
Perfect.
There we go. Okay, again from Heyal. To get a feel of the prices and before approaching you, what are the good websites I can check the properties on?
So what are the good websites to check to find properties, or to check what or something else? To find properties, right? If I understand correctly.
Yeah, where to search for properties.
Okay. So Funda is the biggest one out there. Funda has probably about 96% of all the properties that are on the market. The majority of the properties that are not on Funda are properties that are over $1 million, 2 million plus, because some owners don't want to actually share those properties on the public sites. Funda is one. There's also a few one, and maybe I can pop them in the chat. Give me a second.
Feel free to pop your questions, guys, until we get the links on the chat.
Cool. I'll pop the, where do I find the chat? Here it is. So funda.nl is one. And then you have yap.nl as well, Perarius.nl. And I think those are the three most important ones. By the way, if you want to schedule an intake with Katie, don't hesitate. I'll pop the link in the chat as well. That's an intake with Katie. She is one of our best buying consultants, so don't hesitate. She loves Rotterdam. I have to tell you a secret. I live in Amsterdam, so she's our specialist there. And every time she talks about it, I kind of like understand. And I've been there now a few times supporting people, and I really understand why Rotterdam is so nice, especially considering the craze in some of the other cities. I think Rotterdam is still a great place to buy a home. So I hope that answers your question a little bit in terms of the places where you can look for properties online.
Okay, guys, I don't think we have more questions.
And just when you say that,
I love them. If we do, I love them. So feel free to pop them in the last few seconds. If not, then my link is right there. Just book an intake and we'll have a chat as soon as possible.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie. Great job. And have a lovely evening. I think it's still sunny outside. So enjoy your evening. Thanks a lot, everyone, for attending. Again, if you have any questions, let's say you wake up tomorrow morning, you're like, oh, I should have asked that question. Don't hesitate to book a free intake. No strings attached. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you have there. Take care. Have a lovely evening and hope to see you soon.
Fijne avond, like the Dutchies say, and we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.
Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.